I do feel in some ways spirituality has lost sight of humanity. A lot of it in probably these old practices of just trying to ascend out of the human, you know, affliction, to put it the best way. We've spent so many years trying to escape our embodiment that I think in that might have been the first driving force of spirituality losing its sense of humanity. Um, Nothing good comes from, you could go sit on a mountaintop and be unbothered and be alone for months, and only some good comes of that. It doesn't connect you to this realm. It doesn't connect you to all of humanity. We don't have to work that hard for connection. That's the irony. That's probably the ultimate paradox of this whole thing. We don't have to work that hard to be connected. We don't have to climb a mountaintop to be connected to the other side. We are by default connected. We're golden threads of connection, all interwoven into this fabric of reality. We're working way too hard to be connected. The deeper you descend, the deeper you embody, the deeper you go into the self, that is how you become aware of how connected you really are.
Welcome to a Broaderlands podcast. The opinions expressed on Broaderlands podcast are those of the guest speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host or Broaderlands podcast. Diantha, welcome back to Broaderlands podcast. What an honor to have you on.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
Yeah, we're here to talk about Pippi Longstocking and the spiritual aspects and esoteric meaning behind the whole story.
I don't have my braids out. I can't be Pippi today. I let my hair down instead.
No, I would love to continue our conversation on spiritual awakenings. Like, what does that mean when you use that term, and what actually shifts within the person that has a genuine spiritual awakening?
I think it depends in how the person wakes up. We're talking about like, boom, got hit by lightning. This is my new way, or something that happens gradually over time, because I feel like there's a couple different ways that people experience it.
It's funny you mentioned that because, like I had that big boom one, through a lot of suffering and pain. But, and I went to the 12-step community. AA also talks about the educational variety. Like we have these little ones and, they come gradually, not just that big bang, the big boom type awakenings. And I know there's so many different types of awakenings. There's not like a couple different ways. There's so many different ways of having an awakening, so much different depths and little aha moments to the big bang. I don't know. But you work with a lot of people over the years, and what have you seen with the awakening?
I would say probably more often than not, it's like waking up. And, when you're waking up, you're not just jolted awake necessarily. It's a slow rise, maybe. Things start to look a little bit different. What you felt yesterday doesn't quite feel the same today. The lens is changing, and the things that used to feel, you used to feel joy around, or you used to feel angst around, or the things that mattered more than anything are just kind of bland, and something else is arriving. So that's probably the beginning. It's like almost like when your legs fall asleep or your feet fall asleep, and there's all these prickles, but it hurts. Like, it does hurt. It hurts a bit. Waking up hurts. Sometimes a lot. So depending on how it arrives, if it's the big jolt or the big bolt of lightning that might come in, rock bottom surrender, or something that gradually happens over time, but it's pretty prickly and it's kind of antagonizing, and it's not really kind in its arrival 9 times out of 10. So when people make their way to me, they're usually in a state of some pretty deep pain associated with their revelations, confusion. Um, a lot feel pretty desperate in that state of awakening. It can be so beautiful, but, more often than not, because of what it takes to wake up, it comes with a lot of unpleasantries.
Why does it feel like for some people, including myself, like I don't fit in the world anymore? Like yeah, it feels like I just don't fit in anymore.
Well, one, you're separate from the illusion, right? So once you stepped out of the illusion, you're not really operating from within it. You're operating from some space outside and kind of looking in at everybody else. So by that little shift, you don't feel you belong. The other thing that happens is everything that is surface, casual conversations, the things that we worry about, the kind of hustle and bustle of everyday life falls away in its importance. And so you're not able to engage in those minute things, those little minor things that just at one point, seem to be the way of operating, are just not anything that really sits on your mind anymore. You want to talk about the bigger things. Your
Mm.
frequency has changed as well. It's a culmination of things. So it's you like think of expansion. You got kind of plucked from your tight quarters, and in being plucked, you expanded, and you can't really stuff yourself back into that space. So now it's seeing the new place that you fit in, and likely you don't fit many places. It, we're looking for a whole new way of connecting once that occurs. Does that make
Mm.
sense?
Yeah, it does, and it just you hear about the term walk-ins, right? People talk about walk-ins. I'm not saying I had a walk-in, but I just felt like a whole different person emerged from my awakening. Like the worldview shifted. I feel so connected to the world and the world around me, from the little rodents to people. But I still feel so disconnected in many ways, not through like a trauma lens, but through a spiritual lens, if that makes sense.
Well, do you feel deeper connection to people that also feel deep connection?
Yeah, I do.
It's likely you just find them fewer and farther between. So the even the lack of feeling connected becomes a bit of a state of illusion, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's not that you're so outside, you're actually deeper in the fold, which is kind of funny, right? Like we start removing parts of the illusion and we deepen into the fold of a truer reality. So in deepening, it may feel like you're falling into the abyss. It may feel like you're slipping away from something, but you're slipping deeper into it, and there's just less noise, less people, less commotion in those spaces. So it's a trick to the mind. The conscious mind gets tricked into this idea of isolation in stillness, or isolation in quiet, and doesn't see it as something more connected, or something just deeper in sense.
Hmm. Eckhart Tolle hit it on the nail when he says, "What drives the world no longer drives me."
Yeah.
Um, or be in the world but not of it. That starts to make more sense. Without studying what that means, but just you just have this understanding. Like I feel I feel completely connected to people, even if they kind of don't, no longer relate to me. But at the same time, I had to walk through that phase, and I still do at times. And maybe someone may be listening where people, the group think mentality doesn't want anything to do with you anymore. And that was hurtful and that was hard to walk through. Not being able to connect with people like I once did, when I was out there drinking or just living a whole different lifestyle.
I could speak to that from, some of us are born awake. I think we talked about this last time as well. Some of us just come into the realm with the memories, with this, what we call awakeness. And so we never quite fit in. We never quite and slip into the group think. We might try, we might even like put on the coat and like work our way into it and pretend that that's how we operate, but it's not a very long standing guise. You kind of reveal yourself when you're somebody who's woke in that sense. And so some of what happens, I feel, or what I've experienced in that group think is because of the way you view things, because of the frequency that you emanate, people are feeling a bit more on guard. They're like, no, 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 don't take away my illusion yet. I'm not ready to be in that space. I'd like to stay in this matrix, please. Like, this is my comfort zone.
Mm.
The ignorance is bliss kind of idea. Like it's like they've got their blanket wrapped around them. They're like, please let me be. And so here, this little woke girl ran around telling people some really wild things. Like, it doesn't have to be that way, or you're doing this to yourself. And what I received was rejection in the way of like, she talks weird, or gosh, she just won't have a normal conversation. Or I could sense they didn't want to be held accountable to what was happening. I mean, we're talking about little kids at one point, so that makes sense. But even as I got into my older years, into like 20s and even early 30s, where I still felt the need to kind of like pummel people with the truth of like, I can show you what's going on here. Like, you're tricking yourself, or there's a world outside of this world that you think you're trapped in. And a lot of people are not really interested. They find comfort in the group think. They find comfort in that illusion and that idea. And I learned the hard way some of the responsibility of coming here awake or having an awakening. Once you have those systems on board, we do have a responsibility to not try to rip others from their illusion. And so that's a lot, I think, of the rejection that people that they feel. And I will tell you, it's not always in that I'm running around saying it, or that you're running into these groups wanting to tear down their walls and introduce them to something new. It doesn't have to be spoken. It's simply in the energy that you emanate. It's in that frequency that you emanate, that you are different and you are a threat to their belief system, to their way of thinking.
Hmm. I want to go back to the illusion, but before I do that, I want to ask you a quick question about the word woke. Why
Okay.
has that become a bad word or weaponized?
I could think of maybe several different reasons, but it's kind of funny that it's so rejected, or it's so weaponized. Like, being woke is a bad thing. I don't know how being awake or aware to the way that we're connected is a bad thing. I can't conceive how being empathic, or reading into other people's feelings, or seeing a broader perspective, seeing life through multiple lenses instead of just the one lens that you were conditioned to believe. I can't see how it's bad. So Again, I think it just goes back to a very simple idea that if you're woke, you're a threat to the system, you're a threat
Mm.
to the box that makes everybody feel comfortable. Um, yeah, I mean, we can see it in today's politics, in today's world. People cling to beliefs, even when they're no longer serving the person, even when they're no longer serving that actual individual, they cling to the belief because there's fear in letting that go. It's like, the devil you know versus the devil you don't. Like, you don't even know that that's a devil yet, but you're terrified of the unknown. So,
Do you think there's like some people are just completely unconscious? They can't see what they can't see and they don't know what they don't know. And or do you feel others may be like afraid to be wrong, admit they're wrong, or they're not living
yeah,
in truth?
I think, that protective ego plays a lot into it. I think, um, well, we could get into some discussions on ego for sure,
Yeah.
but there is a protective side of that ego, and we live in a very fear-based society for good reason. We could even get into that. Like, fear has its place, it has its purpose. But I think that's what keeps some people from seeing. Um, I mean, really what it comes down to, and I've taken both sides, all sides, both sides, all religions, multiple different viewpoints of people's and their way of thinking, and it all comes down to when you tear back what they're projecting, you find fear at the core. In every person that finds it difficult to let go of even just their idea of the belief.
Hmm.
No, it's like, even if you're not stripping away the belief, but you're saying, hey, consider this alternative way, this other thought. Even if you're just offering that, sometimes people get frightened and they don't want to be, I mean, you said it, they don't want to be wrong. I don't think it's always wrong for the sake of like pompous rightness. I don't think it's always so
Yeah.
righteous. I think being wrong is really scary for a lot of people. I mean, in my work with my clients, the fear of being wrong is crippling. So that's probably the bulk of why people hold on so tightly.
In the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about when a person responds to the joys and sorrows of others as if it was their own, that's the highest attainment of spiritual union, the highest state of spiritual union. And that hits it right on the nail for me. Like I could feel the joys and sorrows of others as if they were my own, because I could feel that interconnectedness when within us all. I don't know. So that weaponizing or making fun of the word woke, I think that's one of the highest forms of awakening is being in tune with our interconnectedness with one another. And when you have that, you can truly love thy neighbor as thyself because you love the self with the capital S.
Right. For
Yeah.
sure. Um, I think there's that, I think empathy is a slippery slope for a lot of people. Y- You really have to come into your own, really, really know thyself to be truly empathetic and not just join them in their sorrow.
Mm.
Like it's kind of a vacuum. Misery loves company, and it's a bit of a vacuum. And if you don't have a groundedness or centeredness within yourself, if you don't know how to kind of hold on to that foundation, feeling somebody else's ups and downs and highs and lows and joining them in that joy or sorrow, whatever it may be, you might get swept up in their ride. And so I see a lot of people claiming empath when really they're just getting sucked into somebody else's vacuum. I don't see that as a true empath. I think you can be incredibly sensitive to the world around. I think all of our nervous systems, it's like mycelium in a forest. We all respond to each other's actions, feelings, movements, heightened fears, heightened joys. that's why prayer is so powerful. That's why any group that comes together with the same mindset or the same intention, you move mountains with those ideas because we're all energetic beings moving energy. Um, so, when I see somebody that's like, oh, I can't go out into the world because I'm an empath, I'm like, you're not, I hate to break it to you. You're not as much an empath as you are getting pulled into the vacuum of everybody else's emotions, right? You are empathically connecting, yes, but the version of empath I'm hoping for the world to achieve allows us to stand straight and solid independently while like holding hands connectedly and feeling into one another's lives and experiences in a way that we truly do. When you celebrate somebody, do you celebrate them wholly? Can you really witness somebody else's joy and not fall into some comparison or envy? Or so it's a skill, I think, to learn to truly be empathetic, and that usually comes on the other side of awakening. The other side of woke
Do you
comes empathy.
do you think that takes some practice too? Like uh, actually living the principles, like trying to really just be more aware and observe yourself and your interactions with others. Do you think that takes time to
I
come to the
do.
point where what you're talking about?
I do. I think, on the other side of woke or waking up and having this, I mean, I can't blame a person, like I had the luxury of waltzing in here with like all systems go. And so, I think of being a child and my nervous system on alert and seeing missiles incoming from all areas. That's the a from birth thing is like, okay, I had it pretty solid in my first few decades, and still working through the mess of it. So like if it's work for somebody like me, then it's certainly work for the newbie that just woke up or the person that just surrendered this false self to whatever would like to appear or arrive. And then that awakening comes on board. That person is now learning to operate with this heightened connection to everyone and everything. So now comes the real challenge. I mean, in truth, the awakening is like, like I said, that's the part where your legs start waking up and then all the pain rushes in, all of the sensation rushes in, different noise rushes in for the person to weed through. And that takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of effort in the beginning. It takes a lot of effort, so much so that people find themselves exhausted. It's really hard to keep going. Again, by the time, they find me or have come to me, they're kind of a mess. They're like, I don't understand why it's so hard now, or I don't know what to do with all of this. I feel everything, it's that movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once, and their heads are spinning. So we work on really grounded practices and really big spaces of grace to understand that this is going to take time.
I appreciate that. I want to go back to the word illusion. You hear a lot of the mystics point to the illusion of separation. Like, what's its purpose for the human experience?
I love this question. We're so keen on breaking illusions. It's like, I was thinking about this the other day. When you go through old teachings, so like from the 80s and 90s, that's really kind of the height of my world of teachings. It was, the Secret, it was Course of Miracles, it was all of these really wonderful, well-intended teachings that, oh, I'm going to make people so mad, that I today, in today's time, have just a little bit of like, I want to tweak it a little. And here's why. We all started to feel this really, really big understanding. We did have a big wave of awakening around that time. The big, new age boom, I think it was the 70s when Course of Miracles started to kind of blow up, and then The Secret was the big thing, and all of these channelers arrived, and it was suddenly okay to be new age and spiritual in that regard. But what we all started seeking was answers. We wanted answers from the other side, answers from channeled beings, answers from, I remember going to channelings as a child, and it was amazing. This woman would like put her head down and come up, and she would speak like a completely different being and have a different voice. And it was exciting. And we were getting all this information from like what it's like over there. And something about that, as exciting and alluring as it was, something like almost held my shoulders down and was like, no, that's not it. And so I think that always kind of nagged at me. Like, we'll get there. I remember always thinking, we'll get there. We'll understand that. We'll dissolve into that. That will make sense to us. Why are we trying to dissolve here? So then I understood the illusion of separation and its purpose, because, in the beginning, I'm like, why do we have to forget? Like, why do I have to remember and everybody else gets to forget? Or why does everybody have to forget and I get to remember? I mean, pick your side of it. And it made sense that forgetting in a lot of ways makes life worth it. It really does. You get to just experience this world.
Mhm.
You get to just be born into something and go through some shit and feel all of these things. You don't have to work to understand its meaning and the embodiment. You don't have to like dig your heels deeper into some grounded state. Like, you're just planted. And then it's almost like the illusion of our, mystical beings and stuff, I don't want to break any illusions for anybody, but you know who I talk about. We teach kids about them and whatever. But it's almost like the moment you pull back the curtain on that, the magic is gone. So I think, and I know I'm rambling, so bear with me, people. I think that when you pull the illusion back too soon, or you chase the idea to dissolve the illusion too soon, you're taking away a lot of the magic in why we even come here. So, I mean, from somebody who was born outside of the illusion, I had to work like triple time to understand why I should bother with embodiment.
Mm.
What is really cool in an awakening is getting to live life in the mess. And the mess is beautiful, despite what people think. You learn so much, you grow so much, you experience so much, and a lot of it is painful, but there's beauty in that pain. And then you get to wake up and realize what it was all about, and find that you weren't alone, and find that there's some energy outside of yourself, some consciousness outside of yourself that's connected as well. And then you get to take all that new information and bring it back to this crazy life you built and walk the rest of the days with that.
Mm.
I mean, that's amazing to me. So I know I believe the question was the importance of the illusion of separation. And I think I kind of like over nutshelled it, but to me, that's why it's so important. Why come here? Why go to a body? Why be a separate self? Why have, a personality? Why have a different skin suit? Why do any of these things if not for forgetting part of our mission,
Mm.
to discover it? It's like we bury the secret within ourselves, and then we spend a few decades looking for what we buried. And it's kind of like an Easter egg hunt. Like, We hid some stuff to make it fun.
I love that. You brought up the ego, and you brought up A Course in Miracles. Um, Going back to the Course in Miracles for an example, and Eckhart Tolle, they often villainize the ego, and they make it seem like it's bad, completely bad, like the devil. I always say in religion, you hear about the devil. In spirituality or new thought, you hear about the ego, and then in the 12 step community, you hear about the disease. No, but um, what's the whole purpose of the ego for this human experience?
I feel so much for that poor little ego, honestly. And I think, you nailed it with the idea that it has been villainized so heavily. And one, the purpose of the ego is that very first state of separation. I mean, your ego is you, your ego is your personality, your ego is what tells you you don't belong anywhere, and also that you belong everywhere. It's contradictory by nature, which is kind of hysterical to me. Like, side note, I think it would be so funny to write a kid's book about ego and like have him just running around starting trouble with people. Like, you should go say this thing. Yeah, it'll be amazing. And be like, why'd you do that, dummy? That was a bad idea. It's like, it's literally the conflicting thoughts, but I digress. Um, I think ego, I want to protect it so badly because everyone went through this big phase of like, we've got to dissolve it. We've got to kill it. We've got to like finish it off. We can't come from ego. We need to just remove it completely from our being. And for me, I think you say a thing. My ego is not my amigo when it's,
When I'm,
running amok.
yeah, I say my ego's not my amigo when I'm unconscious of it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right. So what you're speaking to is what I would love to promote, which is a conscious integration of ego, understanding its role in our life, understanding that it is a bridge between the separate self and the unified collective. It's even a bridge to the sovereign self.
Hmm.
If you can appreciate your ego and even you stroke it a little bit, like it needs a little stroking from time to time. It needs a little love. It needs to feel important. It's like when I connect to ego, I just hear this little kid that's like, I don't know what they want from me. I'm trying to keep them safe. I'm trying to keep them happy. I'm trying to keep them a part of this. It's like it doesn't know what the person wants. And so, I also think of ego as the bridge between, I think it was Carl Jung or, oh, it's probably Sigmund Freud. I'm probably going to get a bunch of cringies. It speaks of like the super ego and the id, right? And it's the bridge between those two things as well. Like when we're born into a body and we've got this vehicle that now needs to like survive and needs food and needs warmth and shelter and needs all of these things to keep going. If we didn't have ego, let's look at it that way. If we didn't have ego in the beginning, one of those two things, the id or the superego, is going to override, right? We're going to go all in on survival, or we're going to just lay like mush someplace and be like, everybody else can have it all. I'm good. I'm just going to melt over here. So from those basic standpoints, ego just has a bad rap. I guess that's really what I'm trying to say. Ego has a bad rap, and it has so much purpose in the idea that it is a crucial aspect of keeping us in our unique selves. And when we can integrate it, it feels safe enough to allow us to unify and not put up a fight. But it doesn't feel safe until you're at peace with yourself. So you're not really like, what you're at war with is yourself, and what's speaking up is ego. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, a lot of people want to go to war. They're at spiritual war with the ego. Or yeah,
Yeah. like kill it off. And and I do think again, I love Course of Miracles. I
Yeah.
love where spirituality began. I think we had to begin there because something had to give. And if we had to take the path, we were not in a place to take the path of, real self involvement or real self accountability. We didn't have enough people yet in this realm that could hold the wand like that. So we had to start with dissolving the whole idea of the separate self and come together in this more unified collective consciousness. Like we had to discover the collective consciousness before we could begin to work any methods toward really, really achieving it. I think, like anything in this realm, we go too far one way and then we have to calibrate back to center. And so when we are thinking, we're growing up in a very, or we're living life in a very dog eat dog, every man for themselves, very segregated, very cruel, unkind world that didn't look out for each other only under certain conditions and whatnot. We had to go the complete opposite direction and try to dissolve into a pool of everything
Mm.
because we weren't going to break out of that and come to center. We weren't going to just have a few people and be like, hey guys, I have a plan. There's this really wonderful spot we can live in where we get to be unique and celebrate that, but we also get to be interconnected and love one another and then celebrate each other's uniqueness. We're only now, I think, tipping into the capability of being able to like think you rock as yourself and be in the space of like really, really deep celebration for you as the individual and share that collectively.
How deep is that saying, know thyself, especially for multidimensional? It's a pretty deep saying, no?
I think it is such a deep saying. I think like many other phrases that we've passed down through the generations, we say it too flippantly.
Yeah.
We're like, oh yeah, know thyself, no big deal. Well, go sit with yourself for 10 minutes in true quiet, in
Mm.
in real silence, and that's not a thing that many people are very uncomfortable with that.
Why do you feel like, well, at least for me, and I've seen a lot of mystics that stand up for equality and speak up to injustice. I feel like Thich Nhat Hanh, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, a lot of Marianne Williamson, a lot of people feel they need to speak up on that. But then there's others in the spiritual community, like turn the other cheek and act like, let that bypass or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, it's kind of the bane of some stuff right now. I think there's a real deep misunderstanding. You nailed something by saying that our past spiritual leaders, because that's what you're naming is what they were. They were very vocal and they led the collective. They gave permission to the collective to have their feelings, to speak out on injustice without it being all almost crucified. I think in a lot of ways, in at least in past spirituality, and maybe that's the fear of today still, is that if you're not all love and light and sitting back, knowing the bigger picture, oh, you're going to get me on a rant. We're going to go. Okay. When you can see, this is kind of going to cross over into awakening, enlightenment, and embodiment. It's going to kind of do a full circle, I think, at least in the way I see it. There's something that happens when you wake up, and you could speak to this as well with your own experience of nirvana and reaching that kind of like heightened bliss that then shifts into that kind of suspended in nothingness, and you realize everything. You can either sit back and live in that nirvana the rest of your life and not engage with another experience on earth, or you can do what was intended by your awakening and bring all of that peace and centeredness and knowledge and a wholeness of wisdom back into the body, and then practice what you learned or embody what you just learned, what you discovered, right? I think something in spirituality happens where people want to just pull back and stay in the light. And there's this, it almost feels like a false teaching of to not engage, because if we engage, then we're breeding the hate, or we're feeding the hate energy, or we're feeding the fear. And I think when you're truly a centered spiritual being, you can stay center, you can keep your center and say what pisses you off, because you're not losing your center and having your emotion. And I think we've talked about this before as well, where emotions have such wonderful things to teach us. I hope to evoke emotion in people. If
Mhm.
you don't evoke emotion in people, what's the point, right? So anger, relevant emotion, rage, a much needed emotion right now.
Mhm.
If you're suppressing all of those things and you're saying, I don't want to feed the masses, I don't want to feed into this propaganda, this rhetoric, this all this thing, I'm just going to sit back because I believe that the universe has a plan for us and we just have to ride these waves. I would tell you you're wrong. I can't get behind the idea for many reasons. One, I feel very strongly that the universe supports all of our actions here, supports our intentions here, and therefore will and is supporting the outcome. But nothing manifests in this life without our initiation. Nothing manifests without our action toward it as well. So I'm all over here, but it disheartens me in many ways. And I have to raise my hand and be a bit guilty here too, because I'm finding my way to have a voice in this political scene, in this crisis of humanity, because it's so loud. It's actually hard to have a voice. But I'm disheartened by how many want to just sit back and preach or teach, to have faith that, we're going to come out okay, that the universe, the cosmos, the powers that be, whatever source has a plan. Because to me, that is the same as throwing it up to the hands of God and sitting back and saying whatever that will is will be done, and we just have to wait to see the outcome. I don't think these spiritual leaders or practitioners believe that way. So I don't know why they're joining that mindset, you know? I think what we could use today is some centered spiritual leaders to speak out and give permission for others to be enraged with the injustice. And here, I'm going to close my rant and know that it's okay to see the other side of it. It's okay that we can see the bigger picture. It's okay that, like, I, as a spiritual guide or a medium that can see into things, can see that all of this has its purpose, that our systems had to dismantle, that the structures that were could no longer be if we wanted to evolve in a higher frequency and to expand into a greater strength of humanity or any of those things. We had to watch the dismantling of some of these structures. But that would be like saying you go to nirvana, or you have your awakening, and then you don't have to participate anymore. Right? We can take what we see, what we've been able to project or see as seers, and we can utilize, yes, there's a greater purpose. Yes, I see outside of the veil of illusion here, but we're still incarnated on earth. We still chose to be embodied at this time. We are the ones that can see so clearly. So why are we not speaking a bit more about what humanity can do collectively to come together? It's not about fighting some kind of political battle necessarily. You you can only do what you can do in that realm, but you can speak out in dismay or in intolerance of the atrocities of humanity right now. And I think that's where we're missing. Sorry that was so long.
No, I appreciate that, and that's kind of why I love Marianne Williamson. She's actually stepping up, taking the criticism from spiritual and religious communities, but no one else is doing it, you know? And I love what she says, in order to lead the way, you must become the way. And that takes a lot of courage, you know?
It
It
really
really does.
does. It does, especially in a world where everybody is incredibly opinionated. And we live in a wonderful, as bad as it is, we live in a fantastic time because, these voices were suppressed and, suppressed for good back hundreds of years
Mm,
ago. So we live in a time where we can speak our minds. And, I think there's a little bit of shadow going on with that. I think that the shadow is putting up its last fight, that frequency wants to hold on. And
mm,
that's what maybe is creating a lot of fear and suppression. I, I'm really just kind of going round and round with this, but I do believe that we can, on one hand, have trust in what we see, have trust in the bigger picture, have faith in the bigger picture, and still be the guides and be the leaders and be the voice that can help people feel safe enough to be like, highly evolved, and have emotions. That's just something that kind of got removed, I think, from the idea of spirituality. I think I'm getting really personal with this one because people have said to me, I didn't know you get mad. And I always think that's funny. Like, I get mad, but I don't lose my center anymore. We're not talking about, a younger me that was running around angry and then and having a difficult time, maybe coming back to center. Once you really secure yourself in that center, you can have all of the emotions freely, and they are beneficial. So I would say, like, let's have a little bit more intolerance of this inhumane behavior, maybe a little more anger. We don't have to be afraid. I'm not asking people to bring fear on board. I'm saying, why aren't you mad?
mhm. You know, I love you brought that up, because I just had a friend recently call me, and he had some problems with a business partner. And he was taught through the 12-step community that you can't get upset. You know, if you get mad, you're not spiritual, you know? So he's fighting with himself. What do I do with these emotions? And I said, get pissed off, yell at me, cuss, scream, sit with it for a while, question it, learn from it, but be mad, Um, why are we taught that? I remember being taught that early on as well. Like, if you're mad, you're not spiritual, or if you're acting out a certain way, you're not spiritual, or you're not. I'm doing something wrong, and that affects us. How does that hurt us as human beings?
Suppression is like the first thing that comes to my mind, and suppression is the thing that has kept us under wraps for all of eternity. You know, uh, we're taught to be so like neutral's not even the right word. We're just taught to be so bland. And if you're anything outside of, I don't know, complicit or compliant, then, which is one and the same, right? Like, if you're anything outside of that, then you're hysterical. You haven't matured enough yet. Your
Mm.
emotions are getting the better of you. And I would argue that some of the, I mean, let's just say it this way. You don't feel less, right? Since you've had your awakening. So why would emotions be absent?
Mm.
Why do we think, and I do know why we think. I'm asking the question that I would turn right around and give the answer to, but because we've been taught in these spiritual practices that, like, Gandhi was never mad. Gandhi was centered. But there has to be some emotion that motivates your movement. I just, I think we need to start recognizing that people can be evolved and still have incredibly heightened emotions. And we could look at those people and see that those emotions do not take them. Like, they feel their emotions and they experience their emotions and they use those emotions to drive a force, but they are not just run by their emotions.
Mm.
Again, that's to me, when you're talking about really woke and really embodied, those things really come together in that way.
So you're saying it's not all about farting hearts and riding unicorns?
It is not all that. It's not all love and light. I mean, that's probably one of the things that we got, again, when we went too far, we went too far. Um, People were so love and light, they were unaffected. I call bullshit. I do. You're not in the experience any longer if you're unaffected by everything, right? You live in love and light. You're just living in some bypass, some false state of bliss. You The goal is not to be just love and light on earth. The goal is to find that sense of love within the self, within the center of the self, come from a place of love. And once you do it once, you can do it a second time. And then you do it a third, fourth, fifth, whatever, it becomes your MO. Your knee-jerk reaction is to go to that space of love. So you don't have to worry about if you're coming from that place, which is what allows those emotions to be beneficial and benevolent instead of something that's so malefic in this world.
What about the term? You often hear people say, well, I'll just leave it in God's hands.
I mean, talk about removing accountability. I say that with all love. I do, because we've overused the phrase, but we've used that phrase in the way that, um, you know, it's bled over into spirituality, or maybe it never didn't exist in spirituality. We just have to have faith and trust that the universe has a plan for us. It's the same thing. Um, you don't gain anything from being unaccountable, right? There are things that are out of your control. There are things that another person's behavior, for instance, out of your control. I wouldn't put that in God's hands. I would put that in the person's hands and be like, not mine. I got to deal with me, right? But, to be fair and to be a little bit more gentle, that phrase came about because we couldn't explain some incredibly painful experiences. We couldn't explain some of the things that we witnessed. Mothers harming children, people, good, loving, kind, wonderful people having tragic, tragic experiences. We couldn't explain those things because those people were doing everything by what we deemed was right. And so I believe that's the God's hands. It all kind of grew from spaces like that. That if you don't have control over it, give it up to God. If you can't explain it, give it up to God. If it's just a tragedy that you can't make sense of, it was God's will. And there's just some stuff that is written in a soul's orchestration or a soul's incarnation, a plan here that we can't explain. And that's okay. I think what we're really hung up on as human beings is needing an answer and an explanation for everything.
Hmm. You know, sometimes I get a little upset with the spiritual and UFO community. You know, they're still looking for something outside of us to come and help us, save us, whether that be with Jesus or some ETs from the Pleiades. Um, do you think we need to do like more Mindy and just take responsibility and start applying these principles as a spiritual community? Like forget the galactic crap right now. Let's focus on Earth right now. It needs our attention. It needs our help.
I think you're just on it with that because I mean it's very much like let's go I don't know, investigate Mars, and we don't really even know everything about this rock that we live on. So we're always I think it's like the same as when I want people to face themselves. They want to like dance around everywhere but that spot. It's like they're like looking, it's like, no, it's right here. It's like, here's the mirror. It's right here. It's really easy. I promise you. And they're looking all around the room, so many, I mean, I don't even know where to begin. So many things would happen. What you said though, you said if the spiritual community, and I would want to change that word to if human beings would just, we wouldn't be looking for people to save us. We wouldn't be sitting back waiting for somebody to come in and take us from our suffering. Um, but we wouldn't have anyone to blame but ourselves at some point. I mean, you have your childhood experience. You spend birth to 21 years old incarnating on this planet. Once you're 21 years old, there is nobody responsible for. And, by American laws and most of the world's laws, by 18, no one else is responsible for you. You're now an adult and responsible for your own actions. But I'll give these kids to 21 because they're not fully incarnated, right? If everybody said, no one's coming to save me but me, no one is responsible for how I behave but me, we wouldn't need a spiritual community to be the ones to save everything or to alter the experience. And we wouldn't need ETs. We wouldn't need some hope from some cosmic force or galactic federation that's going to come. I know we have watchers. Let's say that. We all know we have watchers. We've always had watchers. The other beings that didn't incarnate on Earth, they're curious about what we're doing here. So we have lots of watchers. I don't know if they'll reveal themselves.
Sometimes I wonder if the watchers are us. Kind of like that movie Avatar.
Yeah,
Like,
a
is
lot
that
of
us?
it is. A lot of it is for sure. Yeah. I mean, I've seen beings outside of myself watching my own personal experience. So, and we would call them aliens. It's crazy. They're like light bodies that are to the ceiling, like they're 8 feet tall. It all the alien stuff makes sense to me because of the visuals that I've personally seen and then the retells from other people. So, what we draw or we recount what we see. And so, yeah, they're very much alien beings, but we're not so far removed from them
Mm.
outside of these bodies.
Do you feel like there's a split right now where humanity has lost its connection to the deeper reality of life and spirituality has lost touch with being human being?
Yeah, almost like which one is the culprit kind of thing, or maybe one promoted the other. It's almost the idea that in some ways spirituality has lost its humanity and humanity lost its sense of spirituality. And I don't have proof, but I would say that humanity probably lost its sense of spirituality would be the first thing to happen. Um, but and this might just go into the back seat idea, the like I'll just sit back and ride the wave and trust that we're going to come out on the other side. I mean, I know we're going to be okay, but we're always okay.
Hmm.
So that isn't as comforting as as it should be, I guess, or is it like as the words are. um of course we're going to be okay, but what does that look like?
Hmm.
Right. So in that regard, that's where I do feel in some ways spirituality has lost sight of humanity. A lot of it in probably these old practices of just trying to ascend out of the human, affliction, to put it the best way. We've spent so many years trying to escape our embodiment that I think in that might have been the first driving force of spirituality losing its sense of humanity. Um, Nothing good comes from, you could go sit on a mountaintop and be unbothered and be alone for months, and only some good comes of that. It doesn't connect you to this realm. It doesn't connect you to all of humanity. We don't have to work that hard for connection. That's the irony. That's probably the ultimate paradox of this whole thing. We don't have to work that hard to be connected. We don't have to climb a mountaintop to be connected to the other side. We are by default connected. We're golden threads of connection, all interwoven into this fabric of reality.
Hmm.
We're working way too hard to be connected. The deeper you descend, the deeper you embody, the deeper you go into the self, that is how you become aware of how connected you really are. My answers are so colorful. they don't really stay in between the
I,
lines, like a
I love
kid that's
it.
scribbling.
I often say authenticity is the greatest minority in today's world. What does the sovereign self mean to you?
To me, it's that truly peaceful, authentic version of you. It's the self that isn't performing, isn't striving. Um, it's just at peace with its being, with its existence. It to me, the sovereign self is like if I put, like equation, like sovereign self equals, I would say equals human being, and the idea that that's all we're striving for is to experience being human. And the sovereign self has a deep understanding of its place, of its of the purpose of life, and the peace and the centeredness that we can have in this life. It's integrated. It's crazy little ego It's made amends with it and welcomed it, said you did a good job. Let me hold you now. It's really just the self that you meet when all the performing and the false identities and the pretending falls away.
I appreciate that. With all the chaos going on in the world today, and if I put us on a big screen right now in the sky
Uh-huh.
and everyone's watching, what would you say? Some words of wisdom.
I would want everybody to stop, like honestly, like even maybe to plug their ears, like take a beat and, well, can I put everybody in a timeout? No, I would want everyone to like just plug their ears and like take a minute to listen deeper. Like I feel like one, that actually would bring a lot of comfort because I don't think anybody is really hearing their self. I think they hear themselves, but I don't think anybody is really listening to their self. I'm really struggling with this one because I'm almost like traveling ahead. I tend to do this thing where I see what could happen, and no, I would do this anyway. I would do this anyway because it would be a glimpse that would be so beneficial. If I could put myself on a big screen, or you put me in the sky or whatever, some big sky daddy getting to tell everybody what to do, plug your ears. Just take a minute. Like I want them to feel into this center, like just that, a moment with themselves, like a moment of silence with yourself. And what is your heart really telling you? If we could connect everybody for a beat, just a boom, in that space, what would come after would be noisy again, but they would have accessed something very different. They would have accessed a place that a lot of people are not aware even exists. They don't feel that bridge there. And I think that would, it might just a little bit. I think it could help.
I appreciate that. If anyone's interested in finding you, how can they find you?
They can go to my website, diantharose.com. It's pretty easy, pretty simple. I'm also on social media, the Diantha Rose. I don't post enough. I'm trying to get better. Trying to be a voice in the noise.
I'm going to end it with the Amit Ray quote. And he said, "Your greatest awakening comes when you are aware about your infinite nature." Thanks for coming back on.
Thank you. It was great to be back.
Yeah, appreciate it. Namastizzle.
Namastizzle.
Just know we out here. Know we out here working in a major way. Had to speak on it just to make a play. Any given subject, know we make a way. Time to level up on a day-to-day. Know we out here working for the greater good. Expand your mind, broaden your lens the way you should. From the stars to the galaxy to speak on spirituality. Higher understanding for the neighborhood.